Thanks for tuning in to episode 4 of the FOD, the future of all things digital commerce. As you know, season 4 is all about the move to composable architecture and how you can navigate some of the pitfalls before you come across them. We've had some really insightful conversations so far, very honest and transparent, and I hope everyone has learned a little something along the way. Now it's time to welcome our fourth guest. Glen has spent the last 4.5 years driving the digital transformation at Specsavers. Prior to this, he spent the majority of his career at Dyson across a variety of roles, including interim IT director and digital transformation director. That's my rather brief attempt at an intro. Over to you, Glen.
Great, thanks, James. Let me start with a bit about me. I'm the digital transformation director at Specsavers. A bit about Specsavers. We are bigger and more global than most people think. We're one of the world's largest privately owned healthcare businesses. We provide services across optics, which we are most known for, but also audiology and domiciliary services. We're about 35 years old. We're privately owned. We sell in 12 countries. We have over 3,000 stores, over 3.5 billion turnover, and over 40,000 employees. So it's certainly larger than most people expect when they see us on the high street, I guess, for this audience, mostly in the UK. I lead the digital team. I'm responsible for our global websites. What that means is we have about 100 million visitors per annum to our sites, and they primarily provide services across what we call find and book. There's about 10 million appointments a year that provide services into our stores. Over half of the appointments booked are booked via our website. E-commerce for glasses and contact lenses, that's growing for us, not just for Specsavers, but as a sector, e-com is growing. We provide also content, browse and search, whether it's content about our brand and who we are, or browse and search around our product offering. We've got some quite interesting pieces of technology we've adopted for virtual try-on. So you can look to our website and try on a latest frame and see what they look like on you before going into a store. We've also introduced some services around remote care, where we've provided the ability for an optometrist to be either in store and provide an appointment and a service directly to you at home, or indeed you could go to a store and the optometrist might be in a certain location, particularly in Northern Europe. That's something we looked where it's harder to recruit optometrists. So quite a wide variety of what our website does. We've got quite a large agenda, moving away from a legacy Drupal 7 monolith to composable architecture. That's a decision we made late or early 2019 with the pandemic that paused us for a period of time. But we're working through a move to commerce tools for e-com, Contentful for our CMS, Algolia for browse and search, ForgeRock for identity, Stevo for PIM, and a custom build find and book solution. So you're seeing a lot of composable architecture selections there. In parallel to moving to all of that, we're also keeping our existing Drupal platform alive for long enough until we replaced it. So quite a big agenda across the whole of the digital estate. And then, as James mentioned, prior to that, I spent over 24 years at Dyson, and the final role I had there was as digital transformation director, moving them from business to direct to consumer. And that moved a business in 2.5 years from about 50 million to 1 billion direct. So massive growth for about 0.5% to 21% of turnover direct, implementing SAP Hybris and Adobe Marketing Cloud, and a wholesale of change across people, process, and technology, bringing teams from marketing, creative, and technology together in new agile ways of working and introducing new partners.
Definitely, and obviously some of the stats you mentioned there are huge, and you actually said the phrase they're quite a lot larger than many people associate the brand to be. And I know when we had our first conversation not that long ago, when you started going into some of the details, they're far bigger than I ever associated them to be as well. So I was really keen to obviously have you as a guest. So thanks for joining us. And I can only imagine some of the challenges that you faced in actually navigating the brand through the changes that you've done over that period of time. I mean, I guess that leads nicely into the first question, really, then, which is, what is the biggest challenge you have faced with the composable transformation at Specsavers?
So we have quite a lot of complex and unique bespoke requirements at Specsavers. You walk into our stores and you get anything from customer record to clinical record to NHS referrals to health fund claims to point of sale solutions. Lots of uniqueness in our requirements. So alongside that, we've got a lot of technology change happening in parallel. So I think our biggest challenge is how we navigate a route through those requirements at pace, how we deliver value, and how we manage the interdependencies across many of the other areas of change within the organization. And with it, we're always mindful of how do we put together a technology platform in digital that avoids the need for us to re-platform again in a number of years' time.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something that you want to try and avoid, because you hear so many conversations of brands that they go through a whole platform selection piece, and then 2 or 3 years later, in some cases, it doesn't even make that period of time, and they're going back through that whole process again. And I think that's one of the benefits of going composable, is the fact that if you did want to change just one area, you haven't got to go through the whole process with everything. You can literally pick one of the products out, swap it, and then obviously insert the new one. I know it's not quite that straightforward. There's a lot of plumbing that goes on behind the scenes, but ultimately that's the reason behind it.
Absolutely, and look, this is a fast-moving technology sector. You know, we've got a pandemic in the middle that's moved it way quicker than probably it would have done otherwise. But this is a rapidly changing sector, and tying yourself into a big monolith was something we were really keen to avoid.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, you're not alone in that sense, and it seems like, well, there are a lot of other businesses that are also following suit for the same reasons. You spoke briefly at the start about some of the technology that you chose. It was Commerce Tools, Contentful, Algolia, Stebo, and I think a couple of others you mentioned. If you don't mind me asking, how did you go around selecting those technologies? Did you have a certain sort of selection process or criteria that you were looking at?
We did. So we got a really strong architecture and design team internally. At that point, we had Deloitte help us on the selection, but we had a clear set of architecture principles we were looking towards. With I'm sure we'd have used the words composable, but that was the principle of we were looking at that point in time. So Mac technologies to really break down a monolith into composable individual modules was one of our key requirements at that stage. We then looked out to the market to see what technologies were out there. I think we were quite early adopters in some of the technologies we selected. And what we're certainly seeing now is how many more customers that I talk to, or other businesses I talk to, whether it's through networking events or through clients or some of the partners we use, so many more organizations are moving in this direction. So we feel like we've made good decisions in the decisions that we've made. Great. Just to give you a sense of scale, I've mentioned size of organization we are and the things that we're doing. The internal Specsavers digital team is about 75 people, and then we use 3 prime partners across what we do. That they're about in total 200 plus people, so it's decent size scale, and that covers the organisation we are today of the 40,000 people, 12 countries, 10 million appointments a year, 100 million visitors to our website. So it gives you a sense of scale of organisation, but also scale of team.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I would agree. And actually, what's really interesting is speaking to people like yourself who have maybe been the early adopters of the transformation. Everyone has said the same thing. We didn't really see it as going composable. We looked at it as more of a modular approach, or however they saw it. And actually, over the last 2 to 3 years, it's now become the Mac and composable, and it's now got the whole buzz behind it. But the I guess the pioneers per se, they didn't look at it that way at all. It was just, how do we make this more modular so we're not reliant on one single point of failure. Sorry.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, look, that moves us on nicely to our second question then. So question number 2 is, what are the 3 tips that you would suggest to any end user contemplating making the move towards composable?
So the first I'd say is plan for a phased migration. Anyone that's done large scale technology change will know that it's not straightforward. It's got a number of pitfalls that catch you out in the long way. So we always look to identify components or systems that can be modularized or composed independently, prioritize the areas that can provide quick benefits and demonstrate proof of concepts. And take this gradual approach, mitigate risks, learn from any successes or challenges, make any necessary adjustments on the way. So don't go big bang and don't go trying to assume you can do it all at once, would be my first point. Second, select technology partners who have got strong skills and very demonstrable case studies in composable. We certainly found many of the larger SIs claim to be experts, but we've certainly really probed the experience. Show us demonstrable case studies to recognise experience in this area. We also took the decision earlier of don't be afraid to use multiple specialist partners who have got the most experience rather than selecting one generalist who can work across all of our areas. So we've taken a conscious decision that whilst we've broken out multiple modular technologies in a composable approach, we've also taken an approach to take best-in-class partners, and we use multiple partners alongside the multiple pieces of technology.
Okay, I think that's probably quite an important decision that you guys have made. I think one of the points you touched upon at the start of that as well is some of the bigger consultancies. They all say they can do it and they have done it, but when you actually really push them on it, they just haven't got that experience. So you made the decision to go down the specialist partner route, where you now have a number or you had a number of businesses that you were managing for the implementation. How did you make sure that all of those businesses were communicating in sync and actually collaborating to ensure the successful transformation?
Yeah, it's really important to work on ways of working and areas like platform and shared services that might go across multiple technologies and multiple partners. How do you make the teams work well together? We have a number of rainbow teams, and try and leave badges at the door and have people focused on the outcomes we're achieving rather than the organisations they work for.
Okay.
Which probably leads quite well into my third point, actually, James. So invest in training as well as delivery. So composable requires changes in ways of working, in processes, in workflows, and in how technology is managed. So don't just focus on delivery. Make sure you've got a work stream focused on people as well.
Yeah, okay. I had an interesting conversation with the chap at EPAM about something similar actually, and he was saying that actually when you make the move composable, a lot of the time the internal staff they then have a completely different way of working, because rather than just logging into one system per se, if you're in merchandising or marketing, actually you might have 3 or 4 different systems that you now have to log into and you have to talk to. And actually you need to make sure that you invest in your staff to be able to utilize the systems properly, because if they can't utilize them, then actually the transformation itself is kind of pointless because you're not getting the most out of it. So how did you go around doing that at Specsavers, if you're able to share?
So we've got a good change function that works with the individual recipients that are using the technologies, but I probably meant more technology teams themselves. So
Okay.
how we deliver and how we support the technologies has changed. So in adopting good, strong, agile ways of working, taking experience from the multiple partners that we've worked with, and then bringing them together in how we, whether it's from product ownership through to delivery to managed service, all those elements need to work really well together. So in a composable set of a suite of applications, we've got different partners working with us in different technologies, and those ways of working have to be really slick across all of them. Some of the shared service teams we've got, whether it's integration, platform, or otherwise, the release, these things have to work really well together. So it's important not only to think about the end users that might be using the suite of applications or functionality you're delivering, but also the teams that are delivering and supporting them need to work really, really closely together.
Yeah, okay. No, I get you. So I was kind of on the wrong end of the stick then at the start of it, but I understand what you're saying now. So would you have someone representing Specsavers that sat in between all of them to ensure that happened?
Yeah, we've got a head of delivery management that looks at all the ways of working across all the teams, and they've got an individual in their team. His entire focus is on ways of working, recognizing that this can be the thing that either improves or reduces pace of delivery. So it's a really important area to get some focus time on.
Good. Yeah. Okay. I like that. And it's an area that I think some companies, I know from other conversations I've had over the years, have possibly scrutinized cost area and said, actually, we don't need this person, and they can do it. In fact, I only had a conversation a couple of months ago now, and this is a large retail brand going through a multi tens of millions transformation, who have really skimped the cost when it comes to owning the actual transformation work, and they've let the SIs and the vendors manage everything, but that's cost them quite substantially in terms of the actual delivery itself and what they're getting for their money. So I think having that person or that team that works directly for the business, sitting between the business and the partners is really important.
Absolutely. And one of the other points I'd raise there is thinking about how you operate the solution post transformation is really important as well. Back to my point of not wanting to re-platform again in a number of years' time, making sure that you've in a composable set of architecture, you've got different features and functions to look after, different applications to look after, ensure they're at the latest versions, they've got the latest upgrades associated to them. It's not one single product you're having to upgrade with a big monolith and a complex set of upgrades to manage to navigate through, but all those applications need to be well managed. And we've had conversations with our board that might have had them think there's this big peak of spend and then it's all going to go down at the end. And we've said, well, to avoid the need to have another big peak of spend, we need to make sure that we're looking after the technologies that we've delivered, and product teams needing to ensure that they prioritize technical features as well as new business features for customers is really important.
Okay.
So technical product ownership as well as features and functions.
Yeah, look, I mean, it does bring a huge amount of change internally, as you touched upon, in terms of how the business can be structured, in terms of the technologies that are required, in terms of how you're going to manage and then own and run all of that moving forward. So often there can be further change once implemented to then manage and maintain it if that's something that you want to do internally as well. So okay, well, look, I guess I mean, there's three, actually nearly four really good tips there that you've shared. Leads me on nicely to the next question, then, which would be: is there any business that you think wouldn't benefit from the move towards composable architecture?
Yeah, I think probably I'd start with smaller scale or simple businesses that may have limited IT infrastructure or a smaller number of applications. The complexity and overhead of implementing composable may outweigh the benefits. Businesses that are more stable and static in requirements, there probably aren't too many in this day and age that are, but similarly, if they've composable really excels in dynamic environments where you've got requirements changing frequently and agility is a priority. Or maybe where you've got budget or resource constrained, implementing content composable does mean meaningful costs up front. So if you've got a smaller scale, simpler, more stable and static business with lower spend, you might have a better return on investment to go for maybe a simpler package solution. But I think probably it's to that smaller scale, more stable, more static, less agile, less frequently changing. Those businesses may benefit from going to a smaller, cheaper solution.
Okay, I find that a really interesting question because I sometimes I'm greeted by the answer, why would you not move composable? And quite a passionate believer in, right, everyone should be making that move towards composable. But then other times I have an answer similar to yours, where actually this talks a bit more about the size of the business. And in our first episode with Anjali, she spoke about the company's digital maturity and how digitally mature is the business. Are they ready to go on this journey? You kind of referenced similar with how big are they? How big is their infrastructure team, and are they actually ready to go on that journey? You also spoke about the costs as well. We all know it's possibly not going to be the cheapest route if you want to go to market quickly. I actually had a client refer to it as I would love a Ferrari, but we're happy with a Ford. So unfortunately, that's all we're going to have. I found that quite an interesting comparison.
Yeah, indeed. Look, if you had a smaller business selling boxes of widgets without much uniqueness in your customer experience or customer proposition, that kind of thing might well suit a simpler, maybe potentially quicker solution to implement. But we're certainly far from that.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, Specsavers is the complete other end of the market to some of these companies. But okay, so moving on to question 4, what is the biggest upside, in your opinion, for the end customer if they were to make the move to a fully composable architecture?
The first point I'd make is agility. So enables you to respond quickly to changing market conditions or customer demands or requirements, or evolving technology landscapes. So you mentioned earlier on that one big monolith is hard to change. If a new piece of technology comes along, we can swap out one of the technologies we've implemented. So that agility, I think, is an important point. Secondly, I'd say the integration to individual components or an ecosystem that you're doing, it facilitates integration with external systems. By leveraging APIs and standardized protocols, you can more easily connect with external partners, platforms, and technologies. And then thirdly, improved innovation and time to value. You can rapidly experiment, prototype, deploy new features. You can, by having a composable architecture, you've got, I think, faster routes to development and deployment. So we've certainly found the risk and pace of software releases has massively changed. We used to be in monthly release cycles with complex integration testing to do. We now have moved very much to daily releases, and we're going to move to multiple times a day in due course. So breaking down the architecture into smaller composable items enable us to really reduce the risk and increase the pace of releases.
Okay, I mean, three really good points there. If you were to put your pen on one and say this is going to be the best upside for us as a business right now, what would you say?
I think the agility is a really important one. That and the pace of releases. Probably, I've given you two answers rather than one.
We narrowed it down from three to two anyway. Okay, if we look at the agility, like you said, and about being able to chop and change different parts of it as and when the business requirements demand that. Realistically, how often do you want to be doing that though? Because you don't want to be constantly in this phase of swapping your ecom engine or swapping your PIM or your OMS or what have you. So I think if you are, whilst I think it is a benefit to be able to do it much quicker, it's still not the sort of thing you want to be changing on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
I guess in your opinion, and I'm going to throw this off course slightly, with the change in technology evolving so fast at the minute, and new providers coming out almost every sort of 6 to 12 months in this space, how long do you see the technologies that you guys have picked now actually staying within the business and adding the value that they're there to do now?
Yeah, anyone that's been through, for example, implementing an ecom platform globally will know it's not easy or fast. So you wouldn't look to make those changes frequently. But in a technology landscape that's moving quickly, we try and keep pace with technology evolution. And if there was a genuine reason that we can deliver a meaningful delivery of business value or innovation with a new product, we'd at least have the ability to do that. But we wouldn't go out consciously here to say we're going to always chop and change the technologies, because they've gone through quite a lot of investment to implement them. But we know we've got the ability to do that should we wish to do so. And that might also mean introducing a new component we don't yet have. I mean, OMS, for example, is one we don't have in our suite at the moment, but is one that we're working through. At what point in time should we have that in our suite of bag of applications? So having not selected one big monolith, but having a composable solution. I mean, Fluent Commerce is the name I hear all the time. That might be one that in due course we go and look at, do we need an OMS and what would it mean to implement that alongside the tech we have already?
Yeah, okay. I think the one thing that I've really liked about seeing the transition to composable is having these specialist vendors build these products in the different areas that just gives so much competition, and competition drives innovation. So like you said about Fluent, I think it's fair to say Fluent is probably one of the market leaders right now in that OMS space. I mean, they've not been around for a huge amount of time. So this move has allowed them to really flourish, and within the next 5 years, I'm sure we'll see that in many other areas as well. Speaking to somebody, if we look outside of commerce, about ERPs, and they kind of see the ERP taking a similar kind of change over the next sort of 2 or 3 years again, which would be huge. So it allows real innovation in these areas for both the business and the customers to benefit moving forward. I guess that moves nicely onto the fifth question. Then, talking about applicability of composable architectures to other areas than e-commerce itself. So, how do you see that developing?
Yeah, so I think that the underlying principles and benefits can certainly be leveraged in other domains. So a couple of examples, travel and hospitality, that's easy to say, might be one, for example. So in travel and hospitality sector, there might be things like reservation management, property management, customer loyalty and distribution. You might want to have personalized experience, bookings, inventory management across different platforms and services. I think the composable approach I could see being one that would work in that area. Another might be financial services. Composable architectures can be used to create modular and scalable systems, whether it's banking, payments, risk management, trading platforms. So ability to quickly adapt and integrate new services or APIs, cover regulatory changes and agility to facilitate innovation may benefit areas such as fintech, open banking and digital banking. So I always look to this as being, we shouldn't think of composable as e-commerce. It's certainly way wider than that.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that kind of referring it to as the modular approach, and I think when you refer to it in that way, I guess there's no reason why it can't work in any sector. To be honest, I don't know a huge amount about the financial services sectors, but having done some work in travel and hospitality in the past, I'm aware that some of the systems are very clunky, they're very old, and they've got kind of patches upon patches, and there's certainly a lot of innovation that can happen over there. So I don't know how far it's moved in this direction. I've heard stories of a couple of quite big brands that are trying to take that kind of composable approach. I guess we'll see what happens in the future as to how that goes for them. But I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be as successful as it is in commerce.
Absolutely. I know some of the airlines are talking to some of the partners that we use for delivery and looking at the experience they've done with us as a case study and think, can they learn from it in adopting their booking platforms for air travel and otherwise.
Yeah, well, I think when you look at any of these real enterprise businesses, whether they're airlines or hotel chains or whatever it might be, they're complex, and there's actually a lot of different parts to the systems. So the systems are made up of a lot of different parts. So if you split those parts out and then have companies that specialize in each of those areas, uh, you kind of ask your question, why would you not want to go down that route? Because it allows you to get the best of breed, which everyone sort of refers to as composable, to ensure your business operates as well as it can do for both you and for your customers. So it makes sense. I guess we'll watch that space then, eh? Cool. So then finally, Glenn, on to the last question today, and that's what's your thoughts on how the next 2 years looks in the composable space?
So I certainly see increased adoption of composable solutions. Whenever I go to any networking event at the moment or talk to any of the clients, it's almost hard to spot people who aren't going in this direction now. So I think we're certainly going to see increased adoption. I think we'll see maturing technologies and platforms. I think we'll start to see some sharing of best practice accelerators and templates. I was talking to one of our delivery partners just last week in a QBR, and they were sharing how another one of their clients had started to look at a templated head to give some of the core features and functions and looking at potentially selling that to other clients. So effectively an end user who's developed with a partner some capability and saying, could we look to sell this and make some commercial benefit off of doing so. So I think best practice accelerators and templates is certainly going to be something I think we see more of. And I think it'll be interesting to see if the back office space gets agitated by composable. We all know the big platforms dominate in this space. I've done a 20 market SAP rollout in the past, so they're never straightforward. I don't call it SAP any more difficult than Oracle or anybody else, but whether those technologies get a similar kind of challenge and agitation, be interesting to see.
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask you about that. How do you see the likes of SAP, Salesforce, and Oracle kind of adapt into this over that period of time?
Well, I mean, Salesforce particularly, I think I've seen people claiming to be Mac or claiming to be composable, and often wondering whether it's marketing spin or whether it's actually they've invested in it, or whether they feel it's because they need to be seen to be it. So it'll be interesting to see how those businesses evolve. But if you're evolving a well-established technology product and trying to make it composable, that's a hard job to do, as opposed to starting from scratch, which many of these businesses have done, to create it into the technologies that certainly we've selected today. So it'll be really interesting to see how that space evolves.
Yeah, I kind of see it as mission impossible, right? And you've got this stack that's so huge, that's already in so many businesses, how you can then break that up into something almost completely different. I mean, yeah, I don't really get how they'll
And
do it.
and many of the larger platforms have been acquired, different technologies acquired and moved in to become a big suite of applications. How you would break those down and make them composable is almost start again. So I think it would be a big change for many of the more established platforms.
Mm, yeah, okay. Well, I really appreciate your insights today, Glenn. Thank you for joining me on episode 4. I think yeah, there's obviously spoke about some really interesting things specifically within Specsavers, but also on some of your wider thoughts around the industry and where it's moving. So I'd just like to take a second to ask anybody that's listening, if you could just like, comment, and share. It really helps us to push this to those that need to hear it. As you know, the aim of this is to help those that are going through the composable transformation by sharing some thoughts of people that have been there and done it, and I've got the t-shirt to prove for it. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.